Philip Kinsella, who is a friend of ours, and we're going to interview him again soon. He had a similar experience where he had gone out of his body, and he even gone through this glass in the house, straight out through the window, and was taken up to a craft of some sort. But he was gone up there astrally to the craft, which is interesting. And he was examined astrally, so he was actually out of his body.
There was a Chinese army lieutenant that was arrested in America for working for the Chinese government, and they were arrested within the bioweapons laboratories at a university in America. And there was an American lecturer that was also working on vials of bioweapons, who was arrested sneaking out these vials of bioweapons to China. It just so happens where this Chinese virus came from was in Wuhan, next to two biological weapons.
And also, then how can they fly into a Pentagon building, which is highly secure, and able to fly so low and so fast?
Hi, welcome back to part 2 of the Paranormal Peep Show with myself, Neil Geddes-Ward, and Andy Chaplin, and we're talking to Paul Northridge of Unite Planet. He's minus one of his assistants, and that's Johnny Sinclair, who's going to be celebrating his birthday. So Paul has kindly stepped up to the mark, and he's acting as two presenters instead of one. So you got to do a funny voice now. Do your co-host.
Hello, I'm Johnny.
I'll surely appreciate it. Yeah, we've done our funny voices, now it's your turn. So just before the break, Paul, we were talking about UFOs. Now, you told me that you have had a UFO experience yourself. How did that come about, and when was it?
It was about I'll say about 13, 14 years ago now. And so I'm driving with my wife, with my daughter, in just about 2 miles away from home. And my daughter spots the UFO first in like a field area, and she's saying, "Dad, it's definitely not an airplane. It's definitely not a helicopter. It's definitely not a Chinese lantern." And obviously, I'm driving. I'm doing 40, 50 miles an hour, and I said, I can't do anything about it." So as I'm driving a bit more, then Yulia, my wife, says, "Yeah, I can see it now, and it's definitely something I've never seen before." She's trying to describe it to me, and so anyway, long story short, it basically followed us to almost to our house, and so I parked up outside on the street where we live, and it's actually then floating above one of our neighbours' home, but I'll say about maybe like 500, no, not 500, maybe like 200 feet above the house. And it was an orb. It was going like round and round in different colours.
Wow.
And it was basically saying like, "Hi, I'm here, I exist." And then it just shot up in the air. It just like vanished within not even like 2 seconds. It was gone. But it definitely went upwards.
Did you have any missing time, or is it just one of these kind of like remote control kind of UFOs, do you think?
I don't recall any missing time, but obviously some people say that they didn't even feel like they missed any time. I didn't feel like I missed any time. My wife and daughter didn't feel like they missed time. But yeah, that was my first ever UFO sighting, and I also had a feeling that I'd probably been abducted, and that was this year.
Really?
Which is a bit unusual as well. I can tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure, please do.
Basically, it was in late February, early March, and I woke up to around about 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling like my body's vibrating. I saw my hands in front of me again, almost like I had a near-death experience. Saw my hands, but there was like this time it wasn't going bright red or anything. They were actually dissolving in front of me, and as I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking to the side, and I see an alien, a little grey alien to the side of the bed.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking like, whoa, what's happening here? And then that's it, passed out, and I don't recall anything after that. But it was just, some people say it's probably like an out of body experience that I had. I don't know. I don't know if it was an abduction. I don't know. But I keep my options open really to it.
Did you have
So-
any strange markings or anything when you come
Yeah.
out of it and woke up?
I didn't notice anything like that. But
No implants or anything.
no, as far as I'm aware.
Oh. Now, interestingly, so this was in the middle of the night. Now, obviously, when I go to sleep and the lights are off, I can't see much. So, what I'd ask you, how can you see a grey alien in the darkness of a room? Is it glowing, or is there a light shining on it from maybe outside?
Good point, actually. I don't know. I just saw it. I don't like. Maybe like I say, it might have been me having a bit of a weird dream. Even at the time, it could be just having an out of body experience. But I definitely felt like I woke up and I felt like I saw it. But I didn't see any. Yeah, I don't know about light wise. We don't sleep with the lights on or anything like that. So, the other thing I would say that my daughter does is to have the light on the top landing, and we did get light coming in from that through the door.
Yeah.
That's anything, but not an awful lot of light enough to see.
Starlight coming through the window or anything like that, or moonlight?
Could have been that as well. We did get that.
It's interesting to talk about the vibrations in your hand because going back to Robert Monroe, who we talked about in part 1, who was the guy that discovered he could go out of his body voluntarily, he would induce the vibrations, he said in his book, and he would imagine vibrations going over his body, and that's what happened. These vibrations would kind of oscillate up and down his body, and that's the kind of thing that pulled him out. And what you've described there, the vibrations in your hand, suggests to me that maybe you were coming out of your body with the vibrational technique and the alien's about to grab you astrally or something, perhaps. And that might explain why you could see it, because you were seeing it with your astral eyes, and it was an astral grey, if you like, not physically manifested in the material world. So if like your daughter came in the room, she would have seen you potentially asleep on the bed and nothing would have been untoward, whereas astrally or out of the body, you were floating up perhaps or coming out, and this alien was going to get you or take you or whatever it wanted to do, but it perhaps subdued you, knocked you out or something, and did what it had to do. Now, Philip Kinsella, who is a friend of ours, and we're going to interview him again soon, he had a similar experience where he had gone out of his body and even gone through this glass in the house, straight out through the window, and was taken up to a craft of some sort. But he was gone up there astrally to the craft, which is interesting. And he was examined astrally. So he was actually out of his body. So it's an interesting thing. So I don't recall him talking about vibrations as such, because I got confused when he kept saying, oh, yeah, I went out of my body. But then I was on board the ship and they were examining me. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, go back. Are we talking about your astral body they're looking at? And he goes, yeah. So it's very interesting that
yeah. So do you think they're doing it for research, or do you think they're healing certain people, or what's your thoughts of why they do these abductions?
Andy, what's your thoughts?
I would personally say have a look at humans and how they work with animals. In other words, you can't really pinpoint one particular group and say, you know, or one particular species, be they human or alien, and say this is what they're doing. Because with animals, there are people that go hunting animals. There are people who do research and kind of like stay away from animals just on a scientific observational role. There are some people that actively go and help animals, helping orangutans and helping elephants and stuff. I think the same with the aliens. I think there's different agendas with different types. Even if you've got greys, there's no reason why you can't have positive or negative greys. Some of them might be purely scientific, seeing how we're evolving, seeing what we're doing, but kind of like neutral. Some of them could be positive, healing, helping, raising vibrations, and some of them could be negative. Some of them could be taking our energy. There's a lot of kind of reports of these negative experiments and things, kind of like where they're putting things up your nostril and kind of causing pain and stuff just for the hell of it, just for, you know, doing it. God knows. I think it's so complicated, and there's probably so many different species with so many different agendas. We just don't know what the hell's going on. I think we on this planet as humans are basically goldfish in a goldfish bowl, and you've got all these other species whizzing around. It's just like, look at the stupid goldfish; they can't get out of that bowl. I think that's what's going.
Well, we only have a
that makes
memory of
sense.
5 seconds, don't we, as goldfish, you know. Certainly that much of a memory you have an abduction. I mean, the other thing is we talk about the holographic universe, where the whole universe itself is an illusion or some sort of projection. So if that is the case, then the Greys have got to be part of that projection along with reptilians and whoever else is out there. And maybe they're part of the program, and what we think is a real thing probing us or taking us on board a craft, it's all part of this facade. You know, once you put your nickel in the slot, you know, this is the show you're going to get, you know. And when the nickel runs out, the program changes and you're in a different level, you know. And these creatures aren't, you know, they're real, but they're not as real. Just like we're real, but we're not as real because we're all part of this holographic universe. That's what people have spoken about as such, you know. And there's some people out there I think they can prove that we're holographic universe. I don't know how, but it's an interesting theory, really, you know. But we're stuck in it at the minute. We're on the holodeck of the Enterprise as such, you know.
It gets deeper than that. So when we talk about near-death experiences, there are some people that talk about this light going into the light and meeting beings and stuff is actually still part of a control system of sorts. Whether it's a grey control system or whether it's an entity or interdimensional control system, but it could still be a part of the matrix, so to speak. Even if you think you're in an afterlife, you think you're meeting relatives, but are you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get out alive, you know, but we're still going in that tumble of a washing machine, really, isn't it? It's crazy world, you know. My goodness. So, have you seen UFOs, Andy? Because I know you're really interested in the subject.
I'm going to say possibly. Do you remember the time we did a Paranormal Peep show where I said, like, literally the evening before I was out for a walk and I saw like two very bright white lights. It was almost like a flashlight going on and then off and then on and then off. So it wasn't so much whizzing, and it could have been a plane, but it didn't really have the characteristics of planes. Where I go walking, there's planes all the time because I live near on the outskirts of the M25. So we've got Stansted Airport, we've got Luton Airport, we've got Gatwick, we've got Heathrow. So I know what planes look like. I know how they react in the sky. You know, you just get to know what planes look like. This one was different. It was bright white. So with planes, usually the white is kind of like a yellowish white color. This was pure white. And it was just the way it came on and off was very odd. So I'll mark that down as a possibly. Could have a logical explanation, which I always do look for. I think it's really important not to go woo-woo straight away. So to have logical first of all. But I couldn't really think of anything. And it was very, very, very high up. And it wasn't a satellite, because a satellite you see going quite slowly and it's like a trajectory. It wasn't helicopters way too high up. It wasn't a drone way too high up. Plane possibly, but it didn't really seem like it would be a plane. What about yourself?
Yeah,
Neil?
nothing, absolutely nothing. You know,
Have you
I
seen
mean,
a ghost, Neil?
well, possibly, yeah,
Okay.
because Paul and Johnny asked me that, and this is going back about 1989, something like that, and I was with my then girlfriend, and I stayed at her house in a spare bedroom because it was her parents' house at the time, and she, interestingly, in the same bedroom, maybe a few years before, had woken up in that bedroom and saw this man standing over her with a fiddle, like a violin, just standing there looking at her. And she went and put her head under the covers, sort of thing. So maybe that particular room had something going on in it. So I was staying in that room some years later, kind of forgot all about this weird fiddler ghost or whatever this thing was. And I woke up in the night because I could hear someone talking to me, and it's like, if you think of the voice of the adults in the Charlie Brown cartoons, like the teachers, yeah, it was exactly like that. That I could hear something being spoken, but I couldn't really work out what was being said.
Yeah.
But I could see some baggy trousers, like really old baggy trousers.
Sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, baggy trousers. Yeah,
Baggy trousers, dirty shirt, pulling hair and eating dirt. Teacher comes through breaking up, back of the end with a plastic cup.
let me do that little bit of a jive, I think. Baggy trousers. Saw the top half a little bit like a shirt, but couldn't see a head. It was just not there, and it was dark. But again, how do you see these things in the dark? God knows, but I saw something just vaguely in the darkness, and it was doing this kind of like Charlie Brown teacher's voice. And I was going, what? It kept talking to me. And in the end, I sort of thought, I wasn't sure what was going on. I just turned over and went back to sleep. And then I kind of thought about it. Oh, crikey, did I see a ghost or something? So I don't know whether it's a ghost or it's just me sleepwalking or hallucination. I just don't know. But maybe at the room had something going on with it because my ex-girlfriend saw that fiddler guy standing over her.
Is it an old house? Do you know the history of it?
No, it wasn't actually, because it was a house that had, back in about 1980, had extensions put to it. So it had had a new roof put to it with the new bedrooms and new floors and things. So where this fiddler was seen and where I saw this ghost was essentially not in existence back prior to 1980. So I actually at the time thought that maybe it was the spirit of my then girlfriend's granddad because he had the same sort of clothes as him. So I was thinking, oh shit, he's dead, But the next time I saw him, he was alive and well. So I don't know what it was. I mean, he died like a year and a half, 2 years later, or something. So I can't say it was connected. But yeah, never seen a ghost. But of course, I felt them around me. Definitely felt them. Definitely seen the effects of them. Felt ghosts coming into my aura and felt spirit moving in as we've done readings because Andy's a medium and I've done mediumistic stuff myself. So I've done readings on people as well. And sometimes you get a really strong sensation of someone moving into your aura as you get in the reading. And other times you get a really weak connection. And sometimes you get two battling at once to try and get your attention sort of thing. Interestingly, there was mediums that could handle that back in the day. There was a guy called, what was his name now? Gordon Smith. And he was an extraordinary medium from like yesteryear. He died in about 1991 or 92. I happened to see him in 1989. I was quite young at the time, and I'm very privileged to see him at the place in Uxbridge Civic Centre it was. And he was famed to be able to give two readings at once. He would sort of give a reading to one person, say, near the front, and there'd be a person on another tier of, say, the theatre, and be doing readings to them. So he goes, you, sir, I've got your wife, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, and I'm coming back to you, and blah, 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 blah. He'd be talking to that person down there. And he goes, now, coming back to you up there, he says blah, 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 and you live at such and such a road. And then he come back to the other book. But he would give away people's phone numbers. He'd give away their addresses. There was one fantastic episode that I witnessed. There was a guy at the front, and he said, I'm coming to you, sir. He said, now, the coat you're wearing tonight is not the coat that you originally set out to come and see me tonight. In fact, I'm being shown that you came out and got into your car and then you decided that the coat wasn't comfortable. So you got out of your car, you went back in, you threw the coat back on your bed, you opened up the wardrobe, you took out the coat that you're now wearing, and you came here, and my helpers, meaning spirit guides or whatever, have gone down to the car park below us because it was a multi-story building and they had a multi-story car park below us. And he said they've just seen your car and they've come back and said it's a red sports car with the first letters of PYE something something, and he gave the rest of the letters. And this bloke sat there, went like that, He goes, yes, exactly as it was, So this is what we've discussed, Andy, on previous shows, that that's not what they call Barnum general statements, where you feel shy in the front company of strangers, or you're you feel confident on certain days and others, or whatever. Very generalized statements. This was specific stuff, And I remember telling a guy that I worked with at the time, I said, this guy's fantastic. And I sort of went into some of the stuff. He goes, it's all fake. I said, well, how does he do it then? He goes, I don't know, but it's all fake. He's going to dismiss it. He hasn't looked into it. And this is what we found with skeptics. They just dismiss it. They won't actually look into it or say, well, look, let's be open-minded at least. Let's go along to one of these things and see what works and what isn't. Now, unfortunately, when you go and do research on mediums, you find a lot that are rubbish, absolutely rubbish. So if you're a skeptic and you saw a rubbish one, you'd write off the whole lot of them. But because I'm persistent and I've had experiences myself, and so's Andy, is that you persist in these things, you keep going, and occasionally you do come across some real cream of the crop mediums. Unfortunately, they're very rare, these really bang on accurate mediums. But when they're there and they give a reading, it's absolutely amazing. And I think when I was interviewed by Paul, I gave the account of being interviewed by Ross Bartlett, who did some really wonderful mediumship on me, so I was privileged to have that as well. So yeah, life after death for me is a fact. It's not just a theory. For me, it's a fact, and you would agree with that, Andy, as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and no GDPR back then. You know, you could give away addresses and telephone numbers.
Oh
within
yeah,
a public audit setting with no problems with that.
that's right. Yeah, give out a phone number. I mean, I've actually seen two mediums that work together, and they'll go around doing the reading, and they go up to someone. They said, "Oh right, by the way, your PIN number for your debit is," and they said, "We're going to give you the numbers, but we're not going to give it in the right order. But you'll recognise the numbers."
Yeah.
And so the guy would go 7-1, and the other would go 3-4 or something like that. The lady would go, "Oh yeah, that is," you know. So they had this kind of somehow. I mean, you know, you could probably get Darren Brown saying, "Oh, it's a trick," and they do it like this or something. I don't know, but it looked quite impressive to do anyway. But
I know what the skeptics would say, although there is one flaw in how this could work. So the skeptics could say, with the sports car, maybe there was somebody in the car park waiting to see somebody park that was going to go to the show, and kind of wrote it down and then gave it to them beforehand. So that's one possibility. But then how would you get the coat? How would you get the information with the coat? So the only way of doing that would be if the person who had the coat change came with somebody, they'd have to get that information off that somebody. But then, of course, that somebody would probably tell the person, the producers of the show came to me and they asked me blah blah blah. So there's that flaw. What was the other one you talking about? Oh, the PIN number. A skeptic probably might say, well, maybe somebody was being observed using a PIN number to buy a drink at the bar or something. Clocks it and then kind of gave the information. So I know how skeptics think because I run up against skeptics, and this is the kind of arguments that they have. But
yeah, I can see that, but when I was there, I know that those weren't the cases. That's the thing, you know.
Yeah.
So when do you first realise that you both have like psychic abilities? When did it happen? What you know, was the strongest things that you felt when you was growing up?
When I used to go grave digging. No. Well, as I mentioned to you, Paul, in my interview with you, I never thought I had anything. I really did not think I had anything. I just had an interest in the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it was only because I used to go for readings at the College of Psychic Studies or the Spiritualist Association of Great Britain that the mediums there would say, "Oh, by the way, you can do this." And I thought, "What, me? No way." So when an opportunity came up to join a psychic developing circle, I said, "Well, I'll give it a go. If there's something I've got, maybe this is the time to try and find out." So I joined a psychic circle, and after about 3 or 4 sessions, I decided that there must be something to it because I'm picking up information that I couldn't have possibly known otherwise. You know, I started to hear voices in my head. It sounds crazy, but literally voices, telepathic voices. And then I started to learn that I was getting pictures as well. A lot of it is learning what you perhaps previously ignored, because with clairvoyance and clairaudience and stuff, you might have heard a voice and just thought, "Oh, that's me." Or you might get a picture in the head and think, "Oh, that's me." But that's you got to recognize these subtle signs, and it's a shifting of your awareness, and you know, mediums have to open up and kind of shift their awareness. They almost have to go into a daydream, which is quite a tricky thing. If you're on stage presenting and talking to people, you've got to try and hold the daydream, but it also at the same time be coherent to the people around you, and that's sort of balancing act. Like it's like walking on a tightrope, you know, which side are you going to fall on, sort of thing. It's quite a tricky thing, but you have to do that publicly all the time though, don't you, Andy, with that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, my first experiences was literally in my cot. So I was about kind of 1 or 2 years old. I remember it really, really vividly. So it was at the old house. It was upstairs in a cot in a certain position. There was a light on the landing coming in. And I just heard this voice right next to me, very deep male voice saying, "Hello, what's your name?" And it's kind of like, it did it a few times to kind of try and gauge your reaction. It's like, "Hello, what's your name?" I now know that it was spirit testing me to see if I was ready to work. At that point, I was kind of freaked out. Even though I was very, very young, I knew that shouldn't be happening because there was no one else in the room, no one human anyway. And so I just kind of like went under the covers. I just remember thinking I just wanted to go away, which it did. It respected that, which is why I know it was like a positive spirit, because a negative one would kind of like up the ante and make it worse, but positive one kind of backed off. So I think it was my guides saying, Andy, are you ready to work? They obviously realised I wasn't ready. If I'd sat up and had a conversation, I'd probably turn into the boy from Sixth Sense. I'd probably start getting all sorts of waifs and strays coming in, but I didn't. I blocked it down. And then roll on a couple of years, actually a few years, about 5 years old at school. I had this dream. It was the first year, it was the class 1, this dream that I was sent to the library for being naughty, that I thought I wasn't particularly naughty, but sent to the library for being naughty, was working there. And I had this dream that this blonde-haired girl appeared with a row of kind of green jugs, water jugs, cups actually, and a water jug stacked up, came up to me, had a conversation. She said, have you been naughty? I said, no. And she kind of laughed and went off. 2 weeks later, this happened to the T. So I was sent to the library for being naughty. There's the girl with the blonde hair, with the cups all stacked up and the water jug, came up to me. And it was like, as this was happening, I was just kind of like, it's kind of deja vu overload. I said, what the hell is going on? I suspect it was to get me to question reality, to kind of like prove to me that there's something beyond what we think is the physicality of, well, everything really. Free will, cause and effect. I mean, even though I was 5 years old, it would spur me on to thinking, what is real? How do we define reality? How do we define what the future is if it hasn't happened yet? But how can we be shown it, kind of thing? So then kind of the years went on, and I didn't really have any kind of like spooky things going on. So I didn't turn into the kid from Sixth Sense, which I'm quite happy about. I don't want to see that kind of weird shit. I've always had an interesting kind of like the paranormal. My favourite show was Strange But True with Michael Aspel. I used to love that show. It was on for like half an hour every Friday night. Absolutely loved that, and all these kind of like crazy stories, and people having like time slips and going into chapels and seeing kind of like ornate paintings that they then find out weren't there, but were there kind of centuries ago. All that kind of thing. Love all of that. Ended up doing kind of like ghost hunts and things just on a personal basis with a friend of mine. Went to Borley Rectory. I don't know if you've been there, Paul. Very strange.
No.
Yeah. The locals don't like people. We don't like strangers. So they actually called the police, and the police came, and they kind of knew what we were doing, because at that point we were parked up, so we weren't in the church. We'd had a walk around the church, but we were parked up, and they said, what are you doing here? And we just said, we're just looking for the little chef. And they kind of like smiled and then went their own way. And we did actually go to a little chef, but yeah, just things like that. And I think what got me into the psychic was I had a cat that went missing in around about 2000. I went to see a psychic, very good psychic in Epping, and she told me loads of things that came through, loads of things that kind of like were true in my life. Again, as Neil says, it wasn't Barnum statements, it was quite specific stuff. And yeah, I think what it was, I eventually ended up going to a spiritualist. It was a spiritualist medium, but it was in a theatre setting, so it wasn't actually a spiritualist church. And he said, if you think that you're psychic or want to learn anything psychic, then go and develop yourself at a development circle, spiritualist one. So off I toddle home. Out comes the yellow pages. Back then, the yellow pages. Just looked up spiritualist church. There's one in Cheshunt, one in Hoddesdon. Toddled off to those, sat in circle, and I found that as I was kind of like doing it, I was really enjoying it, and B, I seemed to be going at a fairly consistent trajectory. So you'd have like some older ladies talking about, obviously, a bed of roses, but I'm getting like, I've got Henry and he's in spirit and he died from a heart attack kind of thing. And so yeah, that kind of like escalated from there. Ended up doing my own psychic readings, private one-to-ones. Ended up doing psychic fairs for another organizer, just around pubs and things like that. And I thought it got to the point where I thought, not only can I do this, but I can probably do this better, because my background is in kind of graphic design and marketing and that kind of thing. And on the psychic scene, the organizers don't know what they're doing with graphics, and unless they actually pay a company to do it, they're usually quite hideous graphic side. And I thought I could do a much better job, improve the banners, bigger banners, more legible. And so yeah, that's how kind of like tuned in events, which is my little psychic events side, took off. And then that kind of morphed into the Paranormal Peep show. Met Neil, I think it was like a psychic development thing with
workshop. That's
That's
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, on a Saturday I think it was.
that's it. We
yeah.
swapped voices and stayed in contact.
Yeah. I think we wasn't getting much in our readings, so we just started to do Yogi Bear and
Michael Caine did it, David. Michael Caine doing it.
yeah, that's right, Malcolm.
I've got your nan coming through, and she's not a very nice lady, so I'm going to tell her to piss off.
Okay, boo boo. Yeah. So, have you had any readings, Paul? Any kind of mediumistic readings with anybody?
Yeah, I've seen. I don't know if you heard of him. He's in Derby. Wayne Anthony.
No, haven't. No.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Basically, I was in my 20s, and I was it was my mum wasn't very well at the time, and it was so I was thinking like I really wanted just to see what he would tell me. So I came down to see him with a friend, and I sat in a room with him, and it was like a darkened room. He looked very strange. I can't describe how he looked. He just presented himself very weird. But he was spot on. He was brilliant. He basically said, "Your mum's ill at the moment." I said, "Yes," and he told me what the actual illness was. Spot on. And then that was it. And he said also about the connection of Russia as well. Eventually, yeah. So he was bang on the money. He was really good.
Now, would you describe that as a psychic reading? Because they weren't. Was he bringing anyone back from the afterlife? Maybe.
I don't know I don't know how he does it. He didn't have any tarot cards or anything like that. He just sat in a darkened room and able to like channel me and see my future and my mum. The reason why I came here, I didn't explain why I was there. It's just first sentence was really, your mum's ill, and I know what it is, and she's going to be fine.
Wow.
And that's what I wanted.
Yeah, but you got your money's worth. Have you ever gone back to see anyone since then, or have you just kind of left it?
After that, no, never needed to really since then. Really, that was my main issue was my mum at the time, and yeah, so never needed to afterwards. Really.
Yeah, and you never seen any ghosts or anything like that?
No, unfortunately, no.
What about Johnny? Has he seen anything strange?
Not as far as I'm aware, not in ghost-wise, no. I think he just has a very much awareness of the bigger picture of the ruling elite, and I think 9/11 was the one that woke him up more about it all, and JFK assassination, and just things like that. Really, I think these the two major ones. That's if you learn about it all, that you can learn there's definitely holes in the story. And a lot of deaths.
Yeah. How do you recall 9/11, the day it happened? What was what was you doing, and how did you find out about it?
I was in the job centre. I was working in the job centre, and there's the code. I think it made it like code red or something in our job centre, because I think they thought, oh my goodness, we're on a major attack in America, so Britain's next, and so we have to like watch everything. People coming in. Is going to be anyone with a bomb strapped to them or whatever. So that was it. So I watched it on. I think did we watch it on laptop or something like that? Or no, I think I just came home and watched it because I wasn't really allowed to watch anything on laptops or anything like that, or computers. So yeah, I just came home and then I watched it on the news really. But
and at the time you kind of went along with the scenario that it was terrorists and planes hitting the World Trade Centers and everything like that, and then sometime later you started to think, hang on, this isn't quite right. What was that point?
I just thought eventually the story wasn't hitting me very well, and I thought that how can people that had a few lessons on a normal plane be able to fly a Boeing, whatever they were, and also fly it so well to actually hit the two buildings, and also then how can they fly into a Pentagon building, which is highly secure, and able to fly so low and so fast. I'm thinking eventually those things were started to hit my my thoughts about it. What about yourselves?
For myself, I was working for a broadcasting company, a satellite TV broadcasting company, and so I was working night shifts the week that it happened. So I on the day before, this is the weird thing, is that we'd not long moved to this house, and I'd woken up about 1 o'clock in the afternoon after doing a night shift, and there was no one in the house. So I thought, oh, well, I might as well unpack some boxes, whilst I'm awake. So I started to unpack some boxes, and there was like loads of photo albums in these boxes. I just took one of the photo albums out and I had a look, and it was a picture of me from 1987, and I was on top of the Empire State Building with my brother. But behind us, you could see the Twin Towers. And when I looked, I thought, oh, those Twin Towers, they look a lot closer. Actually, in the photograph, from memory, I thought they were really far away. So I thought, oh, if I ever go to America and to New York, I'd love to go up the Twin Towers next time, you see. So I just shut the album and then put it on the shelf. And then next day was 9/11.
Wow.
So it's weird that I kind of thought about going up the Twin Towers the day before. And then suddenly 9/11 happened. And of course, I was asleep again when it was happening because I'd done a night shift. I'd gone back in on the nights and worked from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Come back home, had a sleep, slept till about 1, 2 o'clock or something. My then wife said, there's something on the radio about a plane hitting the World Trade Center. I went, oh, right. So we switched on the radio. But listen, I said, well, hang on, it might be on the TV as well. I didn't know how big a story it was. I thought it was like a random plane just hitting it accidentally. That was my initial thoughts. So we switched on the telly, and there it was on BBC One or something. I thought, oh, my God, And then suddenly, whilst I was watching it, the next plane came and it hit it. I thought, bloody hell, this plane's just hit the World Trade Center. So we definitely knew it was something that was up. And then, of course, I had to go to work that night as well, back to the broadcasting centre. It was a Scandinavian broadcaster working in London, broadcasting back to Scandinavia. And people couldn't understand that. Well, hang on, if you're Scandinavian, why aren't you working from Scandinavia? But it was some law at the time they had in Scandinavia that a satellite broadcaster could not be based in the Scandinavian countries. So they got around it by moving their operation to London and then broadcasting back to Scandinavia by satellite. And it broke the rules as such, or sidelined the rules. So that's how this company operated. And so of course, when I got back into work on all the channels that we ran, which is about 14 or 15 at the time, every single channel was a feed from Fox News of the Twin Towers, basically on fire, and the news feed rolling over, because all the main programs that we had were just stopped. All the schedules we had were just forgotten about. And we just took feeds for a whole week of Fox News on all those channels. And gradually we started to resume normal programming. So, but yeah, it was maybe, one of the things I would be talking to the guy who was a Muslim on the night shift, and he was laughing his head off saying, oh, this is great. This is great. The Twin Towers have come down and things like that, down with America. And I thought, that's not good. So he wasn't too popular, but we I kind of got on all right with him. But he said, we was watching the news that they said, oh, one of the news reporters allegedly found a passport in the rubble. Oh, well, look, it is a passport of a terrorist. Look, there we go. That proves it, And we thought, well, that's a bit weird. Out of all the bloody rubbish you pick up there, how come you're allowed in the epicenter of it to pick up a bloody passport that hasn't burned, out of everything?
And I remember thinking, well, we'll know more about it because they'll find the black boxes, because the black boxes have got transponders so you can find them. Never found the black boxes. Why not?
Yeah.
Was the transponders turned off or something? Supposedly, but you should have been able to find the black boxes in amongst the rubble.
And they're supposed to be crash proof. That's the whole point of them. They're supposed to be completely indestructible.
Yeah.
But,
it's a bit like the NASA data tapes, isn't it? No, we can't find them because that might reveal the truth.
Yeah.
Also, I was quite surprised how quickly they came up with a name of who they think did it. Oh, Osama bin Laden. I was thinking, that's a bit quick. And if you can come up with that name that quickly, why couldn't you have stopped it in the first place if you knew that that's what he was going to do?
Yeah.
And then there was the whole kind of Saddam Hussein thing, and I was thinking, okay, even if he did have weapons of mass destruction, let's have the hypothetical that he did. What the hell has that got to do with 9/11 anyway? What the hell has 9/11 got to do with Saddam Hussein?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Why go over there and go there, first instead of Afghanistan? Really, I didn't understand that either.
Yeah. Well, it's the whole furore. Whilst you're kind of killing one country, let's just, whilst we got the money in the bank, let's go and kill the other one as much as we can and grab what we can. So it was an excuse to plunder. It's pirating in the 21st century sort of thing. That's what it turned out to be. But of course, on the other side of the coin now, so sort of new things have come to light, and one of them is the idea of Where Did the Towers Go book by Dr. Judy Wood, who has worked out structurally how all these towers fell, and the only thing that she has come up with is some sort of directed energy weapon that has been aimed at these towers in some way, and that's what caused them to not dematerial, turn them to dust. Dustification, I think, is the term that she used. And there's actually pictures you can see of like one of the transmitter towers. It's actually on the book, and you can see videos of it where you got the tower like this, and then in the next sequence it's like almost turning to dust. The next minute it's just dust. Now, obviously, if that's falling because it's like falling to the ground, that should fall down as a complete unit and crash.
Yeah,
but no, it was turning to dust in the sky.
Yeah. And there's also things like there's cars and vehicles found where half of them are completely rusty and completely burnt out, and the other half, the paintwork is perfect.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and the tires are intact, not melted or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them have been like turned over, like flipped over somehow.
Yeah.
Now that's the Hutchison effect she was referring
right.
to, which is this guy who's up in Canada, and I forget his name, Hutchinson.
John Hutchinson.
John Hutchinson, yeah, and he's a kind of eccentric kind of inventor, a bit like if you think of Doc, whatever his name is from Back to the Future, he's a bit like that. Yeah, Doc Brown out of Back to the Future. He's a bit like that. It doesn't look like it, but he's that kind of guy, always inventing stuff. And he's tinkering with all sorts of electronics in his house and things. And he's done stuff with literally melting stuff with ray beams and all sorts of technical stuff. And so it was something like that he's tinkered with on a localized level, which is what they possibly used in the 9/11 thing. So all the bombs in the basement stuff and all the detonate controlled demolition is another argument that's been put out there, so that they don't want you to look at this Hutchinson effect ray weapon or whatever it is. They just want you to say, yeah, okay, if you think it's a conspiracy, let's just focus on the bombs in the basement or the demolition or whatever, but don't look at this book here. Don't look at Dr. Judy Wood. Look at the demolition side of things, because they don't want you to know about this technology, which might have been back-engineered, I only say might, speculatively, might have been back-engineered from recovered sources or shared technology with aliens. I don't know. That's speculation. But how did they get that technology in the first place? Did John Hutchinson sell it to them secretly, or are they all kind of been? I know that he was visited by members of the CIA or someone in the military or something like that on a number of times, and maybe they've kind of copied his stuff over the years and decided to develop themselves, or he's just stumbled on it accidentally. But certainly they've obviously got the kit and the money to make these things, possibly from space, and beam down the beam from space. Because in the book that I've got, if you've got the Where Did the Towers Go book, it shows these circular holes in buildings that are near where the World Trade Center is, almost as if someone's drilled with a massive 50-foot wide drill into these buildings from above. There's circular holes, like golf ball holes, carved into these buildings. Where did they come from? If this is two planes hitting them, you won't get circular holes, from in buildings. It's almost as if this beam weapon was trying to aim at the World Trade Center from space and kept missing, and just kept firing into these other buildings accidentally till they got the right one. Yeah. That's what it looks like.
And you guys probably saw Building 7, and even then thought that looks very much like a controlled demolition.
Like that. Building 7, that was an interesting one, because the BBC has reported that it already fell, and then while she's reporting it, Building 7's falling, you can see it actually collapsing behind her. That was a bit of a giveaway, wasn't it?
Yeah.
God, so many rabbit holes. I mean, with this, there's so many rabbit holes about everything. And do you know what? It's not stopped. So even we're up to bloody coronavirus in 2020, and where is this virus? Why are these empty hospital wards being reported? Why are doctors and nurses doing TikTok videos when we're told they're exhausted treating dying patients?
It doesn't make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because there's lots of people now in various hospitals that haven't had operations they should have, and they're empty of patients that would normally be admitted, because they're saying, sorry, you can't come to hospital because of coronavirus. I mean, I went to accident emergency with my girlfriend's son about 4 months ago in the middle of lockdown, and we went there. It was the hospital was quiet, and we were allowed to be seen, but we couldn't actually go in the hospital ourselves. He was allowed in and was treated. We had to stay outside. They were bringing various people in for like heart attacks and things like that, but you know, the whole hospital generally had a very quiet feel about the whole thing. Pretty much a ghost town almost.
This is widely reported. I know people who have relatives and friends who work in our local hospitals, and they've been empty for weeks. Apparently, Lister Hospital in Stevenage, around about March time, had about 100 COVID cases. That went down to about 5 COVID cases, kind of like April time. And since then, it's been empty, essentially, more or less.
Yeah, and there was supposedly 2 COVID cases at Poole Hospital in Dorset about 3 or 4 months ago when I went there again for my girlfriend, and I just happened to say, "Oh, how many COVID patients you got here?" Then she goes, 2. Oh, really?
So you've got to ask, when they're standing up in front of the BBC cameras and they're talking about these hundreds of deaths per day, well, where the bloody hell are these hundreds of deaths per day? And another thing I want to know is what's happening to the normal, regular flu cases? Has that suddenly disappeared? Are there nobody out there with normal seasonal flu? Or is it the case that normal seasonal flu has been diagnosed as COVID?
That's got the summer off. It's been given the summer holidays off, so it's gone on holiday. It'll be back in the autumn.
Do you know globally how many people, on average, die of normal flu globally every year?
Is it a couple of million or something?
650,000, roughly.
That's all, really. That's.
I mean, it is fairly low globally, but if you think about it, take Britain. We had the people, the experts, come on TV and tell us about these hundreds of cases per day. Well, imagine if they'd done that during seasonal flu and told us about how many cases per day of seasonal flu. It'd probably be fairly similar, I'd imagine.
That's right. That's right. What's your thoughts on it, Paul?
Yeah, I think the wording of it is very clever as well. Died with COVID, died from COVID.
Having tested positive from COVID.
Yeah, I think they're playing it very, very easily with he died with a heart attack, but he's found to have COVID, so let's put it down as COVID. I think it's terrible, really. I think they're just trying to bump up the figures. But why do they want to do it? What's your thoughts about the actual bigger picture of it? Do you think they want to do it for what, money gain, or?
I have a theory on this.
Go on then.
I think this is. I'm going to need my tinfoil hat. I wish I had a tinfoil hat because I'd put it on at this point. I think it's because we're in a war between light and dark. I think that the darkness manifests itself in humanity in various ways, whether it's the Spanish Inquisition or whether it's Nazism or whether it's communism. Whatever way it will try and weasel its way into humanity to destroy humanity, it will do so. And what I think is that communism is trying to take over the world through this woke progressivism, this far leftism. And I think that the person that stands in the way is Trump. Trump gets a lot of bad press. I don't think he's on the dark side. I think he's on the light side. And I think they've gone through a tick list of different ways to try and get rid of him. So we've ticked off Russian collusion. That came to nothing. We've ticked off what other things have they tried to get him with? But they've ticked off this, that, and the other. Oh yeah, the sexual assault allegation with this porn star or something. That came to nothing. So they're going through all of this. So it's coming up to the elections, and they're like, we really, really need to get rid of him. What can we do? And I think they're working in collusion with the Chinese government. And I think the best way of getting rid of Trump would be to collapse the economy. How are we going to collapse the economy? This is kind of like where I'm thinking. Now, it could be right or could be wrong, but a pandemic would be a fantastic way to collapse the economy. And in terms of evidence with this, I don't know if you're aware of it, but there was a Chinese army lieutenant that was arrested in America for working for the Chinese government, and they were arrested within the bioweapons laboratories at a university in America. And there was an American lecturer that was also working on vials of bioweapons, who was arrested sneaking out these vials of bioweapons to China. It just so happens where this Chinese virus came from was in Wuhan, next to 2 biological weapons facilities.
So coincidence. Yeah.
This is it. There's no specific proof, but if you put in the jigsaw puzzle, I don't think it was meant to be released in China. I suspect there was like shenanigans going on between this university and this Chinese lieutenant and the Wuhan. laboratories. I think there's a bit of skullduggery going on there, and I suspect it was meant to be released in America to collapse the American economy, because it actually serves a lot of agendas. It serves not only the crashing of the economy to oust Trump and bring in their version of communism, which is the Democrat Party, but it's also things like the microchip agenda, the vaccine agenda, the global culling agenda, the police state agenda. So we now got food markets in Australia with police in riot gear looking like stormtroopers in Australia, of all places. And I think that's kind of like where this was meant to be going. And interestingly, you notice that the pandemic, although it's quite bad, or in the mainstream media, it's perceived as being quite bad, Trump is still in power, and he's still got quite a backing. His popularity is still there, and he's still in power. So how else can we get him? Well, let's have civil unrest. Enter BLM, or as I like to call them, burn, loot, murder. So, and I think I think the liberal left are utterly insane. And I think that they're actually communist. I don't think they're liberal. I think they are on the left, but they're far left, and they're communist. I think they want to take over the world. They're doing it through civil unrest in America at the moment. The Democrat Party are like that with the Chinese government. So there's all this Russian collusion thing is blown out of the water so far as the Democrat Party shaking hands with the Chinese communists, and the communists that are backing the Democrat Party. If Biden gets in, if gropey Biden gets in, I think America is foobar from that moment on. Trump is a buffoon, but I think he's of the light, and I think he has good intentions. He may not articulate them in quite the most coherent way or the most intelligent way, but I think if Biden gets in, America is absolutely screwed.
Why can't they just assassinate him? That would be one question.
Apparently they've tried. They've tried. According to Simon Parks, there's been about 14 attempts. One of them has been. Do you remember there was a guy that ran a car into the Trump? There was a Trump rally with Trump attending, and there's a guy that tried to hit him with the car. So there was that. I don't
remember that, but yeah.
There was do you remember a shooting outside the White House a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, they shot him back or something.
Yeah. So there's that. Apparently there's a poisoning. So they went after, I think it was Ivanka Trump. There was a poisoning where she got poisoned, but it was also meant for him as well. She obviously didn't die from it, but I think she became quite ill from it. So far as I'm aware, there's been quite a few assassination attempts. But assassination attempts aren't always guaranteed to work. I mean, Hitler had something like 40 assassination attempts on him. The most famous being the Stauffenberg case, the von Stauffenberg case. I wonder how world history would be, because von Stauffenberg, he had a briefcase and he had like an explosive, but he had two explosives, and you pinch it and acid drips, and eventually when the acid drips, the wire pings and it blows up. Now, he only managed to get one of these explosives going, put it in the briefcase, blew up the table leg of the oak table, and Hitler survived. If he'd managed to clip two of the explosives, I wonder if world history would be completely different, because Hitler might have been killed and the world might have been a completely different place. But how this all links in with it, I don't think the Nazi Party ever went away. I think they just changed locations and they regrouped. So we've got people like von Braun, who was acquisitioned by the Americans to work with NASA. We've got various people working with IG Farben and some of the big pharmaceutical companies that were ex-Nazis. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not massively happy about ex-Nazis joining pharmaceutical companies and big agro businesses and computer.
No, considering their CVs operating on people in Auschwitz and things like that, previous medical experience, crikey. And of course, a load of Nazis presumably went down to Antarctica with their secret bases and UFOs and collusion with the aliens and stuff down there. That's where we're going tinfoil as well. But we have discussed that previously.
Bell. Yeah, you got the Die Glocke, the Nazi bell. No one knows exactly what it's about, but it's this big concrete structure that looks like a water tower. But there was this theory that the Nazis were trying to develop either some new weapon or new kind of UFO technology with this big revolving energetic thing. God knows what they're up to.
Yes, it just gets stranger and stranger. The more you dig, the more bizarre stories you come up with.
It's like Hitler. I mean, I don't think he actually died in the bunker. I think he escaped. Because I heard like lots of stories like he was living in Argentina. And what's your thoughts?
Film, The Boys from Brazil, which was based upon Nazi hunters, ended up in South America, and they headed out to Brazil, and that's where all these Nazis are hiding out. But the skull of Hitler was never proven to be his. Apparently,
I think it was female, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know the details, but I believe that the skull was not supposedly Hitler's at the end of the day. It was burned. They couldn't really recognize it. It was supposed they thought it was Hitler, but not necessarily. If it's female, it could have been his girlfriend, Eva von Braun, I think.
Yeah.
So is it Eva von Braun? Or am I confusing names?
Eva Braun.
Eva Braun.
Yeah.
Okay, nothing to do with von Braun, who did the Saturn V rocket.
That was Werner von Braun.
Yeah, it might have been his sister.
This is Jesse, by the way. This is why I had to disappear. My little...
Oh.
Funny enough, talking about von Braun, I think it was von Braun on his deathbed that said the media reported threats against humanity would be, first of all, the Soviet Union. Secondly, it would be kind of like rogue terrorist states. Then he said, I think it was asteroids. And then I think he said after that it would be the aliens.
All fake, of course.
You're all fake, all kind of purported in the media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't mention the coronavirus then. Maybe
No,
I
don't think so. But certainly in the news, I don't know if you've seen it, but they're talking about the asteroids flying past, the kind of the close hits. Yeah, so we've got that.
But that's not really. I mean, it's not really like big news, is it? In the sense of potential. Oh my God, we got to have a government pamphlet how to duck asteroids and hide under your table or paint yourself white to deflect the blast or something.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
they're just like, oh, that's a near miss. It was 250 million miles away, so it just flew past us and things like that. But so yeah, that was I forget the lady. She worked with him. She was an assistant and forget her name. But yeah, I don't know how true that is. I mean, I haven't seen anything. I mean, there's parts of it that rogue nations and rogue terrorism and stuff like that. It could be true.
Well, we've had that. Yeah, I mean, look at Osama bin Laden and the Taliban and ISIS and the whole Syria situation. So there's your rogue nations.
It could be that once that story got out, though, they've had to change their ploy a little bit because they think, oh crikey, that video of Werner's got out now. We're going to have to change our plans. The cat's out the bag, so we're going to have to do coronavirus instead of something. Plan B or something like that. Yes, yeah, definitely the cat was out the bag. Yeah. So, what have you got lined up for the remainder of the year on Unite Planet, Paul? Any potential guests that you got lined up?
To be honest with you, we don't really plan that far in advance. We just, people do write in and say, we'd like to be interviewed, and but so far we don't have any interviews lined up. No, not at all. I think we'd like to do conferences, but with the coronavirus, we had to put that on hold as well.
Yeah, so everyone's been pretty much stuffed as doing anything. I mean, I was going to be doing a talk in the earlier part of this year, couldn't go ahead, and I know that there's going to be this Lapis conference up in the northwest of probably around Blackpool area, I think, which something might have been there to replace the Probe conference. Now that's failed to go ahead. I actually suggested on Facebook that I said, but you could probably get round it because companies are still allowed to operate. So I said you could call yourself a charitable company, the Lapis Charitable Company, and you're having a big meeting, and all the people that come through the door are your freelance employers for the day. They'll pay a $5 on the door to be a freelance employer. They sign a little book or guest book or whatever, and then you have your big meeting, and that's what it's about. So that's how you can get around it. That's how you could get around it. Is call yourself a company. Or you have loads of little companies all meeting there, 6 people in each company, all within a few feet of each other, but they're actually there for the same thing. You got to think of ways to come back on this.
Exactly. Think outside the box.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that was a deliberate ploy by the government so that you can't do these protests that people have been doing in like Trafalgar Square and things like that?
I think so. Yeah,
but it seems pretty clear. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But you can do like say fox hunting, but you can't do with these demonstrations.
Absolutely.
But I don't think it's going to work anyway. These protests or signing petitions for this, and they won't work, unfortunately. As much as I like them to work, I don't think they would work.
I think the unfortunate thing is, and the slightly depressing and pessimistic thing is, the only thing that would work would be a mass consciousness awakening of people saying no, as David Icke basically points out.
Yeah.
It needs enough people to say no. But unfortunately, looking at history, most people just go along to get along. Most people would just put the hand in the air to salute Hitler. They'll just raise the fist to salute Mao, and they'll just go along with it, and that's kind of depressing. The hive mind of reality, I don't really have much kind of hope for, really. I just don't.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah. There are people that are raising their consciousness and trying to sort of point out things, but there still are in the minority, which
It's a
hopefully
numbers
people watching this show might get a few ideas and think things through for themselves, and don't take our word for it. Examine the evidence for what you believe to be true, and go with it, and be open-minded about these things. If you feel that it's all legit, then it's all legit. But if you feel that there's something untoward, then investigate it or research it or look into it. But certainly, I'm very suspicious of the whole thing. It's all a bit too convenient. And like I remember Andy saying at the very beginning of the year, you saw these videos of people literally dropping dead in the streets in China from coronavirus.
Where is that now?
Yeah,
where is that in any country? Where is it? If it's the same virus, if it is the same Wuhan Chinese virus where people were dropping dead in China, where are they dropping dead in the West?
Yeah, it's all a lot of woo.
It's all a lot of woo.
And on that note, I think we have to say it's the end of the Paranormal Peep show in conjunction with Unite Planet and Paul Northridge as our guest. And we're your guest as well. So,
Exactly. Thank you very much. It's been brilliant.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and we're very glad to join you from Andy and myself. So on that note, ladies and gents, we'll say thank you very much for joining us on the Paranormal Peep show and Unite Planet. Stay safe, and we'll see you next month.
And remember, if you're American, vote Trump.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.